My name is Rachelle Smith, entrepreneur, professional speaker, and author. Last time I shared the value and the gifts that are in every goodbye in our lives. Folks, we should always learn the lessons, even from the rejections, from the abandonments. As painful as they may be, I promise you, if you'll take time to reflect, to analyze, but most importantly, take responsibility for your role, because it always takes two to tango in any type of relationship situation, whether it's in the workplace, romantic, friendship, community, whatever the case may be. But folks, in that same vein, I actually wanted to share some thoughts here from an article, a Bleacher Report article written by Mike Freeman on September 15th. And so it's on their website, and it really speaks to this point. Again, there's a gift. In this particular case, the person hasn't said goodbye, but there's certainly the potential is there. And I just want to read this for you quickly, and then share some thoughts. Indy, meaning the Indianapolis Colts. Indy has committed one of the greatest sins in professional football. It took a good quarterback for granted, supporting him with a JV, if you remember back to high school days, junior varsity, supporting him with a JV offensive line and a front office that still doesn't seem to know what it's doing. And so, folks, and the reason why I've titled this episode, Don't Make This Mistake. And this is a perfect example of that. And I know I've highlighted this concept in a few episodes in different ways, but folks, one of the biggest mistakes you will ever make in your life is taking people for granted. Taking people for granted. Now, obviously, Andrew Luck, who's the quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts, extremely talented. Now, of course, that's a scenario where he's bound by contracts, trade clauses, trade restrictions, all of that. So it's a very complicated dynamic that's at play that keeps him there. All right. And so, of course, part of the going forward in this article, they pointed, he needs to demand a trade. And if they can't even figure out what they're doing and put some strong supporting players around him, then what's he even there for? He would have better luck somewhere else. And so this is unique where he's locked in for various reasons. He's locked in. But unlike the Andrew Lucks or the professional Tom Brady's or the Drew Brees of the NFL, in everyday life, for the most part, people aren't locked into those type of contracts to where to walk away would be, just legally, financially, there's just tons of penalties and all of that people certainly avoid when in the NFL. Does it happen occasionally? But for quarterbacks and people in those type of leadership roles, you're not going to see it. But in your everyday life, whether it's the workplace, and yes, your CEOs of your top Fortune 500, Fortune 100 companies, yes, do they sign employment agreements and things like that? Yes, employment agreements exist, but those can be bought out of. Those, there's different language that can be written into the contract that would, for various reasons and things, that circumstances where the person could be released from that agreement. So there's different ways that people can work in these employment agreements. But guess what? Even when signing employment agreements, people walk away all the time. Employees, staff members in this country walk away all the time, even after signing an agreement. So do not take people for granted. Your top performers, and I'm going to speak from two different sides of the issue here. Your top performers, your people that have been there a long time, your loyal employees, do not take those people for granted. People that are making things happen for your corporation, for your small business, if you're an entrepreneur, whatever the case may be, if you're a nonprofit, do not take your people for granted. Same is true for your customers. Do not take them for granted. All right, so this happens in the workplace. It happens in romantic relationships. So some would argue, well, the marriage contract and this and that. Okay, according to statistics, what is it? 1 out of every 2 marriages ends in divorce. So signing a contract is not enough in many cases to keep someone there who is not happy, or if something is not working out, or for some other reason, irreconcilable differences, whatever the case may be. So don't sit back and think you're going to take your partner for granted, your spouse for granted, your boyfriend, girlfriend for granted. All right, in those extreme cases where a person has extremely low self-esteem and zero confidence, are they going to stay in an unhappy situation in any type of arena in life? Absolutely. Yes, they will. But for the most part, I think people are, kind of average when it comes to their confidence. So over time, eventually, they will get fed up and they will exit the situation. All right, so you need to know that relationally, professionally, in the community. Perhaps you lead a nonprofit or you're a volunteer coordinator. Do not take your volunteers for granted. All right, you will be sitting back after having been rejected more often than not. You're probably surprised that I can't believe so-and-so left. They were such a great employee. Or, we had been married 20 years. Or, that he and I were going out for 12 months and everything seemed so great. Okay, well, guess what? That's why the beauty of rejection, as I stated last time, the beauty of rejection and abandonment, there's some lessons you're going to learn that you wouldn't learn otherwise. Those type of scenarios force you to sit back and say, okay, what is it? What did I do? What went wrong? What is my part to play in that? And that's what needs to happen. All right, so this team is on the Indianapolis Colts. I mean, you're taking, like I said, this situation is very unique, but it needs to apply to your own life. Do not take people for granted. All right, most people are not this loyal. NFL quarterbacks and elite quarterbacks and things like that, they're not that. Yes, they're very loyal, but your average person is not that loyal. You'll be getting a letter of resignation to your email inbox and just wonder what happened because you thought that employee was so happy. Do not make that mistake. Do not take people for granted. Take time to express your appreciation, to be proactive, to solve problems, to gauge feedback. There should be a continuous feedback loop regarding of what your relationship is, regardless of what your relationship or interaction with that is. Do not take people for granted, because you will wake up wearing a clown suit, looking like an absolute fool and feeling like a fool, wondering what went wrong. When the answer, if you would have paid attention, if you would have been more perceptive, if you wouldn't have taken that person for granted, you would have seen the signs. All right, folks, I can give you a number of examples in my own life, and like I told you, I'm not a fan of rejecting people. Now, I worked in sales. I'm very resilient when it comes to rejection. I've had episodes on triumphing over rejection, and so I don't take rejection personally. But I always, and particularly in extreme situations, you always have to, ask, what went wrong? What could I have done differently? Yada yada, because that's a chance to learn and grow. But I do reject people. And you've got to really, how should I say this? And pardon me for just using just the language, but the vernacular, but you really have to suck for me to reject you, because you've got to remember, folks, I'm a very positive, very happy, upbeat person, see the world through rose-colored glasses. So you really have to suck for me to reject you or walk away. But it's true. It's true. And I'll just give you, a few examples here as I think of them. So last fall, so the fall of 2016, I had a newer handyman. Now, keep in mind, I have a handyman for extreme situations when there's something I can't do myself. All right. So fortunately, when I bought this condo, it was new construction in '09. So fortunately, everything's been great. But there may be an extreme case where there's something that I can't do or I can't handle. So had this handyman, for the first time, showed up, did what I needed him to do. And the second time, it was a Saturday morning. I so remember this. Saturday morning, last October 2016. And so the appointment was at 1 o'clock. He and I had just talked a few days before, and then he said, well, looking at my calendar, Saturday at 1 o'clock would be perfect, yada, yada. Long story short, folks, that same Saturday, he calls me a little bit after 2 o'clock, after I've been sitting here waiting on him. He calls me and says, well, you know what? I'm actually staining somebody's deck right now. Do you really need me to come today? And folks, I was just too through. I mean, it takes a lot to get me mad, but I was so irritated. Why? Took me for granted and did not respect my time. I hate that. On a Saturday when there was things I could have been doing, he called me late, did not call. Imagine if he would have called at 8 o'clock that morning and said, you know what, I got to stain someone's deck. I may be running a little bit later. What's your calendar looking like for tomorrow or the next day? All right, but he called me after the appointment, well after that 1 o'clock appointment. Okay, took me for granted. And what did I tell him? You know what? I don't need your services anymore. Have a good day. Click. Done. Replaced. And ironically, now I have a handyman who's a 67-year-old retired mechanical engineer. So ironically, this person was actually in an audience in Lansing, Michigan when I spoke a few years ago. So I sent out a notice online, and this person responded, are you the same Rachelle that spoke in Lansing and then on this date and with this topic? And I was like, oh my gosh, yes. So he remembered me, and he's fantastic. So things always work out, but that's an example of handyman. Secondly, all right, my fellow fitness fanatic doctor, Dr. Adrienne Ashmatot, she and her husband, started a family, got a little baby, Bryce, and so they moved to West Michigan in late June. So lost them, to the other side of the state. So had to find another doctor. So I said, well, for ease and convenience, I'll see one of her partners. So I won't name her partner, but saw one of her partners and said, oh, well, it'll be easy, yada, 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 already in the practice. I'm already in their system. Long story short, folks, I saw this doctor in I think it was late July, early August. I can't remember when it was. And this particular person was part of their group, but was in a different office, so to speak. Dr. Ashmutai's office was in Livonia. This person was in another part of town, but same group. But folks, this doctor just was just time was just not even, it just slow. That's probably just the best way to say it. This doctor was extremely slow, was not authoritative, was not confident. And so I'm vague on confidence. When somebody's in a place of authority in my life, they need to be sure of themselves. They need to be confident. They need to be take charge type people. But it just was not a good situation. And you got to recall now, I've spent several years calling on doctors and hospitals in Metro Detroit. So I know strong doctors when I see them, when I interact with them. I've seen the best of the best, and I've seen the worst of the worst in Metro Detroit during my medical sales career. So that person it just was not a good fit. And again, just disrespecting patients' time, having them sitting there waiting in a lobby forever, and there's no regard and there's no updates and things like that. It just was not a good situation. And I'm very good about analyzing situations and what am I trying to say here? And setting things up and just analyzing situations and just understanding what the dynamics are at play very quickly. I'm sizing things up. That's what I'm looking for. I'm very good about sizing situations and people up. So didn't work. Anyway, got another doctor here, different group, absolutely. Saw her on my birthday, September 13th, here this year. Absolutely outstanding. Remember I told you I've seen the best of the best when it comes to doctors, and I've seen the worst of the worst. And so this doctor is outstanding, extremely well regarded, 5-star reviews online, and this person absolutely earned each and every 5-star review, but just outstanding. But see, folks, I don't let people take me for granted. I'm very quick to change a situation that I'm not happy with that isn't working. And if you all have seen and heard about my leaving my last gym here in Novi, perfect example, yet another example, taking me for granted. Thought they were going to put a Band-Aid on the problem, and their way of dealing with it was causing me problems. And I expressed that, and just absolutely, nice people, good people, but mediocre leaders. I mean, just please, Lord, I pray, please, Lord, let them hire somebody that knows how to run a gym. Please, Lord, for the benefit of members and everyone else, please, Lord, please. But again, folks, I was unhappy in that situation. That was, taking me for granted that I'm just going to stay there forever and put up with mediocrity and nonsense. Absolutely not. I've been at Planet Paradise. That's my nickname for Planet Fitness in Novi since June 28th. Folks, absolutely, radically, unwaveringly happy, outstanding staff. Absolutely, positively amazing leadership team. Think about part of what I do is leadership development. So leadership and having competent people that know what they're doing is so important to me. It's so, and particularly in gyms, because my dad ran gyms. I've grown up in gyms. I've been in gyms in my own fitness journey for the last 23 years. So important. All right. And these folks, and part of this, their strength just in that particular location, but the franchise overall is known. They don't take members for granted. You send feedback to corporate, you send feedback to management. They take it seriously, and particularly I can go on and on about my own location, but something that happened, what happened to me at my last gym would not ever happen at that location, because they're good, they're perceptive, they're attentive, very responsive to feedback. I have an open line of communication with management. In fact, let me digress here for a minute. September 13th, 2017, 6:03 a.m. Guess who was the first person to wish me happy birthday? The general manager of Planet Fitness in Novi. Absolutely, in 23 years, that's never happened, ever. But why? They're attentive. They pay attention, body language, anything like that. All right, that's a group. They wouldn't be surprised, by particularly when it comes to me. They wouldn't be surprised by my rejection. They pay attention. They watch me. All of that. They're just very in tune to their members. They care. Why is that? They don't take us for granted because they know there are other options. All right, and I tell people, Planet Fitness, they can't be mediocre. In the franchise level, you can't be mediocre when they've got the $10 no contract membership, roughly on the franchise level. About 41% of members are paying that $10 no contract membership. Then you've got 59%. Okay, you got the other folks in the $20, the black card membership like I have, that is a contract. Okay, when you got roughly 40% of your members with no contract and leave at any moment, you cannot be mediocre. You're going to be losing people left and right. So they work hard. They have a tremendous work ethic. They are just the strongest staff I've ever seen in 23 years. Absolutely amazing. But why? What is the sweet spot? Okay, my biggest thing and why I'd end up rejecting people, there's always an element of taking me for granted in there. All right, another strength that they have, they don't take people for granted, but they also, the communication lines are open. They communicate. Okay, we have open lines of communication and dialogue. They don't take things for granted. That's what I'm saying. They would be so in tune if I wasn't happy or something wasn't wrong. They would call me on it before I would even say anything. They're that perceptive, and that's the way you've got to be in your relationships, in your marriages. Okay, something's not right. You notice the person's becoming withdrawn, or they come home and they're frowning, or whatever. You got to pay attention to that stuff before it's too late and you're looking at a stack of divorce papers. Folks, I want you to be successful and happy in each and every aspect of your life, but if you can really evaluate your stance on taking or not taking people for granted, I promise you, your relationships and your lives will be so much happier. So take this advice, please, please, please. It will save you a lot of headache and heartaches in your life, and you will be just radically happy like I am. But you notice I take action. I take action. I take positive action in each and every instance. Thanks so much for your time. Make it a wonderful day.